Welcome to the Tesla Power Podcast. This is the Tesla Energy Community. This is where we explore Tesla solar panels, solar roof, and Powerwall for your home. I'm Aaron Brady. We have a lot to cover today. Let's talk about install timing, Tesla's solar roof pricing correction program. Let's talk about what happens in off-grid mode when your battery fills up, what happens in off-grid mode when your battery is drained, and did you know there's a residential solar installer Olympics? And let's talk about feed-in tariffs. What even are they? Let's do it. As per usual, we'll start with community input. You are that community, so comment below. You can do one of several things. You can contact us by making just that comment below. You can call 203-816-5150, or you can email teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. For our first comment, we have Tom. He is here. Tom just got the Tesla solar roof and emailed me pictures. He writes, quote, full screen here. I saw your YouTube channel and thought I would share how my install went. I was caught up in the price increase after I had signed a contract. Dealing with Tesla can be a challenge, but with only $100 at stake, I hung in and they offered me more incentives. Compared to others, my experience was better than most, end quote. So thank you for your email, Tom. And let's get that photo up there. Let me pull that up. It is a beautiful property. And I mean, that solar roof looks great. In fact, you must have had a drone for this shot, right? It looks maybe even like it was post-processed. It's got nice contrast. Maybe it's just a really great drone, but it looks like the Tesla vehicles, yeah, those are still in your driveway. I think one of them is. It's really kind of hard to tell from here. So your install must have just wrapped when this photo was taken. It looks like they kept the vents in the backside of your roof. I did follow up with Tom by email, and it turns out those are the exhaust pipes. So they have motors on them to eject stuff from the kitchen or from the hood vent on the oven or on the stove. He did confirm that the other vents that are just for plumbing, those have been cut off and covered over with solar panels. I suppose, though, Tom, your power walls are in the garage and that the cable conduit from the solar strings, they aren't visible in the shot. So maybe all of that's in the back of the house, or maybe even they ran it internally. But everything looks really good. And thank you for sharing. And you sent a second nugget of goodness, too. Let's pull that up. It's this timeline here. You've outlined your install from order confirmation to PTO. So let's go full screen here. A total of 7 months from this order confirmation on February 19th all the way down to PTO on November 14th. I think this is going to be pretty standard, maybe a little on the long side since you had to be patient through the increase or through the price increase negotiations to get it back to the right value. The work was pretty quick, just 8 days. So if we scroll back up to the top, right here, installation begins on the 20th and installation was complete on the 28th. That's pretty great. This makes me think that you didn't have the old roof torn off, but again, you confirmed by email that the roof was torn off. Basically, they were doing the electrical at the same time they were doing the roof tear off, which is really good, really efficient. I see both your local inspection and your utility were pretty quick. All this time, basically between those two things, right? Local inspection and this date right here was just waiting on Tesla to submit, get their M together and submit their paperwork. I see potential for the process to take only 8 weeks, right? It should be possible to do 2 weeks for the final design, 2 weeks for Tesla to install, including the roof tear off. And then, yours was only 8 days. That's really fantastic. So maybe even less than this, but maybe on average, right? We would say, and then 2 weeks for town inspection. So it's a total of, and then 2 weeks for the utility approval. So it'd be a total of 8 weeks. Maybe they could get a little bit tighter than that. But Tom, Congratulations on your solar roof. Thank you for sharing your experience. Super awesome. All right, the next one up, we've got Chris. He was also outlining his experience. He was working through the pricing program that Tesla put in place to work with customers that had signed contracts before the price increase. Let's read it. Quote, I had a bad experience with the return to price prior to April 2021. I too was offered this, so I called to see how much I'd save. Now keep in mind, before April, my price listed on the Tesla website was $35,000 for my solar roof. When I called in, they couldn't give me an exact number, but said it'd end up being less than $1,000 of savings if I reverted. Read more? Right. This thing goes quite long, so I'm gonna abbreviate it here, but it'd be less than $1,000 of savings if I reverted. I'm currently quoted at $47,600 for the updated roof. So, end quote. Now, this is definitely suboptimal. You know, rather than going through all of the specific details of the negotiation, I'd like to really focus on the overall result. Did you end up paying more, or will your price stay the same? You know, from what you were originally quoted, it was $35,000. Your contract now is at $47,600. I mean, obviously they got another, $12,000 out of you. So you will pay more. I mean, you're getting tremendous value for that additional, 12 grand for sure. You know, the additional solar shingles, nice to have. The additional Powerwall, great to have. I mean, overall, I'd say you're probably in a place that's better than you were before. And I hope your experience for the rest of the install, through PTO is way smoother than it's been. And you know what? Share some photos, video of the process, even if you can get it. If you're asking the crews any questions, they are absolutely going to be the same questions that other viewers of this channel will want to know. So we're looking forward to hearing more from you over the next couple of weeks. Congratulations. The next question we had, or the next comment anyway, was from Marty Edwards. He got his install date, quote, installing date October 20th, 4 kW array adding to our 8 kW system. So that's great. That's about a 12 kilowatt system, right? And we have a solar water heater too. 4 power walls, hopefully no problem in Connecticut, end quote. I mean, that sounds great. I like the amount of storage you got. I wish I'd gotten more than just the 2 power walls that I have, and we'll run through some of that stuff later here in the show. But I think, Marty, you're in the Eversource service area, and you'll be getting some of that really sweet demand response payment action. Please share some detail on that program when you get it. We'd love to know. I mean, what are the actual checks looking like? How it affects the payback period of the system, that whole thing. The 20th, that's going to come quickly. We look forward to hearing more from you on your install. And thank you to everybody that contributed this episode. It's a better episode as a result. If you want to get involved as a listener, you can comment below, as I said before. You can call 203-816-5150, or you can email teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. I've got a little news to discuss right after this interlude. Be right back. All right. The first news item I wanted to cover today is from Solar Power World. Did you know that there's a residential solar installer Olympics? Super interesting, right? They tell us about it here. Quote, the solar game, the industry's first installer competition asks teams with building residential solar and storage systems with building solar plus storage systems live in the shared expo hall. Oh, they task teams. Man, I can't speak. Can't read English. Taking place in a custom-built stadium, the bracket-style tournament features multiple competitive rounds where teams go head-to-head, installing solar modules, racking, inverters, and energy storage, end quote. And there you have it. The Solar Installer Olympics. I mean, I can't imagine that it's exactly a thrill ride. Not that the actual Olympics are a thrill ride all the time. I mean, how many of you guys have watched the steeplechase? But they're only going to be working with sponsored equipment. Now, they don't explicitly call out those sponsors in this article, but the board members are from the following manufacturers and professional groups. They're from K2 Systems, Revision Energy, Rolls Battery Engineering, Twende Solar, the Building Institute for Technology and Safety, and Solar Cowboys. Yeehaw! This article, it's simply announcing this competition is open for applications. So this would be worth a revisit to see who competes and to see for sure what products are used. I don't know. Tesla loves competitions. They love bragging rights. It'd be very interesting to see them compete and offer kit for teams to install. More to come. The next news item is from ABC News Australia. It's abcnews.net, so maybe they're not even related, just for full disclosure. But I do have the links in the show notes, so go check those out so you can see what these sources are from. This article quotes, Australians with rooftop solar are growing increasingly frustrated as energy retailers slash financial incentives. Some households are hitting back by dropping their reliance on these companies and installing batteries, end quote. Now, you might ask why I cover so much news from Australia, where, well, they're on the front slope of the adoption curve and are a harbinger for what we in the rest of the world will see when residential energy market starts to mature. I'm in the United States. We're still ramping up solar incentives for the most part. It's not going to last forever, though. You know, some states, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, are already cutting solar incentives because the amount of renewable energy on their grid is making it less stable. Now, admittedly, it's not going to be a concern for most of us in the short term, but it will be in the long term. And these great incentives for just solar production capacity are going to drop. And the ROI that we've calculated for our 30-year systems is going to decrease. Unless we are able to manage all of our energy needs locally. And that means batteries. And I mean, the incentives to add battery storage, they're inevitable. Why? Because battery storage is required to stabilize the grid when its percentage of renewable resources gets above about the 30% mark. Now, in this article, the incentive isn't coming from government or from utilities offering subsidies for battery storage to their customers. It's instead a market incentive through higher rates charged by the utilities and lower subsidies being offered on the front end of that adoption curve. Now, being on that front end of the adoption curve, way more painful. So I want to say thank you to our Australian friends who are blazing the trail. Now, by the time the United States will need to shift away from solar incentives, batteries will be many times cheaper and probably higher capacity. What's helpful for us in the meantime is to stay educated on how batteries work, the best technologies to integrate, and the best value we can get once the addition of batteries makes sense in your market. For some of us, that's now. You know, for others, it's a bit out of reach. For now, it's going to get easier. It's going to get a lot more accessible. But over the next decade, we'll be looking at batteries as an essential part of our housing decisions, even in apartment complexes. Even if you don't own that battery individually, you're even going to care about it in your municipality, because that's how you're going to be managing your energy production and the amount of energy you're going to be able to use as a consumer. In this article, customers are especially irritated with the drop of value in electricity sold back into the grid, right? You may remember that they had a massive issue in with their grid in 2018 that resulted in Tesla providing an emergency timeline of 6 months to put the Hornsdale power facility online. I mean, 6 months for that enormous battery. The specs escape me at the moment, but something that had never been done, and they did it in 6 months. At that time, it was the biggest battery project in the world. With that and the number of residential power walls now installed in Australia, the value of renewable electricity has leveled out from its tremendous spike in value in 2015 until now. Now, what is it called when you sell your energy back onto the grid? That's called a tariff. So, back in the intro, I had asked the question, what is a return to grid tariff? And that is just another way of saying selling your energy back to the grid. Now, they're not getting the same amount of money for selling their energy back to the grid as they used to. So that ROI is reducing, and it's really irritating them. You know, anybody who has financed their system, it means they're paying more for the financing than they are for the energy, than they're getting back, being able to sell that energy back to the grid. So these battery systems allow them to store the energy they produce so they can maximize the value of their residential solar installation. That offsets the amount of electricity they have to buy, and maybe even eliminates the need for them to buy any electricity from the grid in the first place. And that's it for the news. Let's take another little breather, and we'll get into the off-grid mode edge cases. So I've been burned twice now trying to go off grid. Today's the day that I get it done. Not only that, but I've recorded a couple of quick videos showing what happens when the battery is full and what happens when the battery is empty. So first, let's go into off-grid mode. Let's see how smooth the transition is. Let me just get that pulled up here in 1 second. All right, I just want to transition over. So we've got our magic... It's ridiculous. I was about to try to go in again. I can already see that my Powerwall is at 100%, so I can't do it now. But what we can do is look at some of the videos, because there are some transitions between grid mode and off-grid mode. And what I can say is it's definitely smoother. And now that we're in off-grid mode, well, at the moment we don't happen to be, but let's go look at those videos that I recorded earlier and see what happens when the battery fills up and when it empties out. So that first one that we're going to look at is what happens when the batteries fill up. Let's cue the clip and play. All right, time warping, Wayback Machine to earlier in the day. We've been in self-powered mode for a little bit already. You can see the animation running now. And I have been waiting for the battery to go from 98% to 100% for about an hour. So... one thing that I noticed was that the solar roof production has been fluctuating right around my current home use production. So it looks like the system is throttling the solar production to match my use. It's a little bit different from what I thought might happen, specifically a little different from what Frosty GT thought would happen, where it would just shut down production. It's throttling it. So we're not producing anything extra. And it's not going to fill the rest of my battery. Now, I did go into off-grid mode at 98%. I was thinking, okay, we're getting close. I'll watch it as it crosses over that threshold. Obviously, never going to get there. But what I want to see is how much production is going to go up when I go back on the grid. See how long it takes for the battery to fill back up, and see if it'll even let me go back in. Of course, it won't let me go back to off-grid mode once I hit 100%. So I'll see if I can catch it at 99% and go back. We can see if the lights flicker, see if the whole transition is pretty smooth. So, ready? Reconnect to grid and engage. Reconnect to grid. Success and done. The animation hasn't caught up. It's still showing the X on the app. Okay, so now the grid has caught up. I would expect it's got to spin up the inverters, because the inverters should be the ones that are throttling the solar production. The solar panels themselves can't do anything. And that could... I believe these animations are only updated every 5 minutes, so it might take a few minutes before we see the difference in the application animation. And that may not even be enough time for me to see it go from 98 to 99. We shall see. It's very sunny outside, so I would expect that our solar production is going to be significantly above a kilowatt. We should be generating like 6 kilowatts, maybe 8 kilowatts right now. And I do see it slowly climbing up. So we're at 1.3 kilowatts, you can see at the top. as that goes up, it'll be interesting to see how quickly it comes back down once I go to off-grid mode, especially since we're going to be so high on charge rate for the batteries. While we are waiting, I wanted to point out that there's a battery indicator right at the top of the animation in the top left corner. It's not there now because we're back on the grid, so the battery percentage is just shown in the bottom center of the animation. But when I go back off grid, we should see that battery indicator show just above Brady Manor on the upper left-hand corner of the home energy gateway. So we're up to 1.6. It's taking its sweet time. I wonder if a little bit of that has to do with the fact that I might go back into self-powered mode. So we might not get to very high production. As soon as I see it go to 99%, I'm going to switch back to off-grid. Since we're charging with almost a kilowatt and I've got 26 kilowatt hours of storage, it might take about 2.5 minutes to get there at this current rate. Of course, I've been flapping my gums for a couple of minutes already. I don't get a runtime on this current recording. I do. We've been recording for like 4 minutes, so it might end up taking a little bit longer than that. To get to 99. What is very interesting to me is that we still haven't sent anything out to the grid. That's expected behavior, of course, because we are going to keep all of our energy until we fill the batteries to the very top. It's only after those batteries have been topped up that we'll start sending energy back out to the grid. And our solar system's warmed back up to 2 kilowatts. I mean, one of the questions that I still have, though, is where does all that extra electricity go? I mean, presumably it goes to ground. And if that's the case, we're sending like 6 kilowatts straight into the ground right now. It's a lot. Big jump. Now we're at 4.5 kilowatts. And I can hear one of the fans on the battery spinning up right now. That is our water heater that just clicked on, or our hot water system. But I can hear the cooling system on one of the inverters going on right now. And they're not very loud. The hot water system that's right behind me, it's a tankless water heater. It's going to be a lot louder as it's switching up because it creates a little explosion in the tank when it lights the gas. It happens to come in from city gas. All right, we've been watching this for about 6 minutes now. Since we've got our hot water heater turned on, and since the inverter now is drawing some power because its cooling system's turned on, we're using more power, so we have a lot less power to go to the batteries. I still see that it's throttled down a bit. But, it's always possible that there's some clouds outside. I just can't tell from here. So I'm just getting a little impatient. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back on the grid. Back off the grid. And we're going to see how the solar generation adjusts. I would expect it to go down from 1.5 kilowatts to match what we're using in the home so that we're not charging the batteries at all since we're at such a high rate of charge. High state of charge. Here we go. Going off grid now. I heard the click from the gateway. And it did shut down the solar system. Now, it's interesting because I don't expect that the solar system will stay off. What's probably going to happen is we'll take a bit from the batteries and then turn the roof back on. Question is, am I patient enough to wait for that to happen? Remains to be seen. Ah, well, there we go. There's the solar system providing 0.1 kilowatts of electricity for just a hot second. So it did drop very, very quickly when we went to off-grid mode. Down from the 1.3 kilowatts to 0, and we're only seeing it slightly turn on. But still not quite what we had expected, where it would turn it off completely. But let's go back to present day me, and we'll do a little wrap up. So, like I just said, it's not exactly what Frosty GT thought. It's not what I thought either. But that's why we do these experiments, of course, right? We're going to figure out what's really going on. So, really, what happens is it throttles the system, and it gets it, back to, or to match what you're actually using at the moment. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Let's see what happens when the battery goes completely empty. Let's cue up that clip. And action. All right, this is actually try 2 for this part of the Wayback Machine. I was up 5 a.m. this morning and accidentally hit the reconnect to grid button right before I started recording. Painful. But we've got the battery back down. We do have a little bit of solar, but we should have less solar than able to run the dryer and this and the toaster oven. So I'm going to go turn those on. We're going to leave this animation up. I just want to show you that I'm also charging the car, or at least I was trying to. Yeah, it's not going to let me do... Oh, it says charging in progress. Maybe I just need to wait for the animation to catch up with it. In any case, the whole point of it is just to use more, obviously, electricity than the battery can keep up with. We're down to 6%. We're going to run this down to 0. Just waiting for that animation to come back before I walk away. And what we want to do is we want to see what happens when the battery goes to 0. Will it reconnect us to the grid? I'm just going to do my darndest not to touch that reconnect to grid button. The whole reason I had touched it was to keep the app alive, keep it awake so that I could continue to record. Let me just kill it really quickly and try one more time. All right, there we go. All right, so I'll be right back. Let's turn on the toaster oven and the dryer. I'm supposing I'll edit, excuse me, I'm supposing I'll edit this down a little bit. Because even with only 6% left in the battery, drawing at the 7.2 kilowatts, 7.4 kilowatts, pretty impressive. That's only 2 heating elements, the dryer and the toaster oven. I mean, the toaster oven won't stay on as long as the dryer will. So I may go back up just to goose it a little bit more. See how quickly we can get it down from 6% to 5%. But if we were to do some estimating, so I've got 27 kilowatt hours in the batteries. 10% of that would be 2.7 kilowatts. And since we're at 6%, almost twice that. Sorry, almost half that. So, 2.7 would be about 1.35 kilowatt hours of energy left. If we're pulling 7, so 1/7 of that time. Yeah, 10 minutes or so. Still a long time for us to be waiting here. And right there, it took us off the grid. Didn't even wait for it to get to 0. So what I want to point out is that there is no scenario under which my battery can charge from the grid. It can only charge from solar. And that's by mandate from PURA, the regulatory authority here in Connecticut. So that 0.7 kilowatts coming from the roof is going into the battery, and all of the 7.3 that the house needs to pull right now is coming from the grid. So it did automatically fail over, and it didn't wait even as long as I thought. I thought the battery would be able to get down to like 1 or 2%, but not that close. But that's kind of good. Keeps this clip a little bit more manageable. And, based on that, I think we can get out of the Wayback Machine, back to real time. So this is exactly what Frosty GT reported would happen. We would simply reconnect to the grid to get the power we needed to keep our home running. So very interesting exercise. I'd say it shows two things. Number one, we're going to need a bigger system, specifically a bigger battery. If we're going to get all the way through the night, if we're on off-grid mode, especially if we're, having a couple of bad days of solar, then we got to have more storage available. The second thing that it shows, I would say there's only a slight difference between self-powered mode and off-grid mode. That slight difference meaning that you would never be able to send back to the grid if you had extra solar production. You're just going to curtail your solar production. So, I don't know, not my favorite thing, I guess. Most people, I think, would benefit more from self-powered mode. But if you don't have PTO, off-grid mode is your way to stay out of trouble with the utility. Happy for the system to reconnect me to the grid when I need it to. Awesome. The more hands off, the better. I guess, I should stay in off-grid mode so I can limit the damage when the utility discovers I've been using my system without PTO. I don't know. Can't wait to find out what's going to happen. So let's call it for episode 25 of the Tesla Power Podcast. I'm your Tesla residential energy community organizer, Aaron Brady. Let's do this again on the next video.